Wow, hello, good evening. Welcome to Going Deeper. We haven't been around for a while. We took a break over Lent, but we're back now. And I'm going to welcome our guests, which are Neil and Helen. Welcome, good evening, you two.
Hello.
Good evening.
Hello.
How are you both on this sunny evening?
Good, nice. Spent a nice afternoon in the sun, so all is well.
Good. I got caught in a hail shower because we had to get the washing in.
Oh no.
Did you not get a hail shower?
We had about 5 specks of rain.
Oh no, it was really cold as well. I went down my back, trying to get this washing in. But oh well, just localized over us then.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Just hello to Megan. She says, hello everyone, looking forward to this as always. So that's great. If you are watching, do say hi in the chat. That would be amazing. And if you do happen to have any questions or any response at all to the stuff that we're talking about this evening, or from the sermon series that we've just finished, which is core training, then do just pop them in the comment section, and we'd love to respond to those. So, Neil and Helen, you, along with myself, we preached on this series for May, which was called Core Training. Neil, how would you sum up the series? What was it about, really, in your opinion?
Well, I really like the analogy of the core training. So, the analogy is that if we're going to get our physical bodies in good shape, we need to start with the core of our bodies, something that probably I haven't done particularly well. And the analogy is that if we're going to be spiritually strong, then we need to get some core things in place, core exercises or routines or disciplines, whatever word you like to use. And I thought the 5 that we had are really good because they are, from mission to worship to giving, hospitality. I've forgotten one. And I thought they covered it pretty well. I certainly enjoyed preaching the one that I did. I think if you were going to give me the 5 to choose, it'd probably be the one I would go for last, which probably means it's the right one for me to preach. Because I have to sort of sit and most of the time I just talk to myself rather than actually talking to the other people that might be listening.
Well, that's the best sermons, isn't it? The ones that you're preaching to yourself, really. Because I think that's a sign of a good sermon and a good preacher. Because we certainly have not got it all sorted, have we? So
that's for sure.
We learn through preaching and preparing, and then share what we've learned with other people. Just to say, I actually pinched those 5 core practices from an author called Robert Schneis. He was a bishop for the United Methodists in Missouri in the States. And he wrote a book called, I'm looking over it here, I've got it on my computer, 5 Practices of Fruitful Congregations. Now, I've made some slight changes. So his was radical hospitality, which we did. Passionate worship, that was your one, Neil. Intentional faith development. I called it questioning faiths. So I changed the title and the theme of that. Risky mission and service. That was yours, Helen, although we looked more on the mission and service bit. Yeah. And then he talked about extravagant generosity, and I talked about sacrificial generosity. But yeah, pretty much the same. He doesn't pick up on the analogy of doing exercises. That was me that came up with that one.
Very nice.
But Helen, what was your topic?
I had risky mission.
Risky mission. How did you find that? Was that challenging to you as you prepared it?
So when I was at university, mission was at the forefront of most things that I did. I was heavily involved in the Christian Union, and that was literally the whole point of the CU was, to give every student on campus the opportunity to hear and respond to the gospel. And so that became very, very part of, that. And so this was a really nice sort of reminder of what I should be doing and why I should be doing, because it was something that was so integral, just a few years ago. I like to tell myself just a few years ago. And actually now sort of, I don't know about you guys, but I find myself being like, oh yes, no, but I'm being missional by being Christ-like. I'm just trying to be a light in the darkness. And actually we're not often quite, blunt about it and quite, this is why I'm doing this. This is what I'm on about. And actually, we're just like, oh, just my presence is, shining a light in this place. Because,
well, of course it is, Helen.
Well, obviously, just look at my kitchen wall. But, I think that sometimes we claim just because we're a Christian surrounded by non-Christians that actually that's a really good starting point. Don't get me wrong. I was talking at house group this week. Was it this week? I don't know. About being in the world and not of the world. And actually, I think sometimes like, oh, but I'm in the world, so therefore. But actually, we do need to be more risky in our mission and actually be more going and more doing. And even though you'd, already slightly changed the titles, I shortened mine once again to go. And actually, and to go somewhere, to do something. And so it was a really nice sort of reminder for me of something that I used to be so passionate about. And that's not that it's died off, but I've sort of become a little bit lackadaisical around it, shall we say.
That's a good word. That's a good word.
Word.
Do you think, I'm going to try avoiding talking about Hawley Baptist, but just churches Christian generally, do you think we've become a bit risk averse?
Yes.
Yeah. So you've talked about mission, but we try and do mission without the risk, which is I'm just gonna let my light shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine.
Yeah.
Neil, you've got a slightly longer view of church because you've been around a little bit longer.
You're so kind.
Have you seen a shift in that respect of mission?
Oh, I think so. If I'm going back, I don't know, 40 years or something, you had, or maybe even longer than that, you had sort of Billy Graham crusades, and Lewis Palau came to London, and we used to go door to door knocking as a church. I'm not sure whether Hawley Baptist Church did not, but churches certainly did. The church I was involved as a youth had what they used to call evangelism explosion, and if you wanted your child christened in the Anglican Church, you could expect a visit from a team who would come and explain the gospel to you. And I think it's probably a slightly different world we operate. I'm not saying all those things we should still be doing, but I think we move in a slightly different world now. And with social media and all those sort of things, in some ways it's easier to get our message out, and yet some ways I think we're maybe more reserved before we do so. Don't know.
Yeah, I mean that's one thing I guess lockdown did, which brought about this whole thing, wasn't it? It was the fact that getting our message out there and being missional has suddenly become easier than ever. But it certainly removed the risk, I guess.
Yeah. I'm just going to move, just as you're talking, I'm just going to move. Apparently, somebody tells me, Angie tells me that I keep freezing every now and then. So you're going to be a guided tour of my corridor as I move. Move from. So do carry on.
This is like some sort of home program.
Yeah.
It's through the pinhole.
There you go. I think you're going to get a picture of the garden instead.
Oh, very nice.
Lose the elephants and gain the garden.
Indeed.
I was feeling competition with the orange, so
Yeah, I mean,
sorry about that.
The boring office behind me, but never mind. There we go.
There we go. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay, so mission. I think particularly Alpha. A lot of churches, I think, just go, well, if I'm doing Alpha, that's mission sorted, and actually, that's once again, it's risk averse. It's just let them come to us. Oh, look, Daz says, is the church risk averse? I thought Daz was out, or are we still a bit ashamed of the historic reputation of Christianity? Now that's a good one. I think Daz is right. We do have a pretty bad reputation as a church. Do you think we're just feeling a bit ashamed of what people might think?
I think that's definitely one facet of it. I think it's probably one of those things that's slightly different for each person and for each church and for each congregation and probably for each country as well, is that actually, we've got this reputation that in some ways is great and in some ways is brilliant, in some ways really isn't. And I think for some people that's what holds back. And we go, oh no, but I don't want to, bring this side of my life into this side, because actually I know that this is great, but that opens myself up and us up for criticism from everything else. And I think that probably fear of criticism, I don't know, as I speaking for myself here, is probably one of the biggest things. And so actually, whether that's fear of criticism from friends and family going, really, you believe in that whole church thing, right? Okay, but the church X, Y, Z. But similarly, as you were talking about social media in lockdown and making it so easy to be sort of missional as such online, just by like even just sharing the Sunday service, I found actually I was more scared of the Christians than the non-Christians sometimes, of actually that criticism of, you know, I love our church, don't get me wrong, but every church is very different. And so therefore actually will my Christian friends be like, oh, that's the church you've chosen, really? And actually, and those sorts of things, and actually that competition sort of element comes in as well. And so I think that there's a huge sort of fear around what we do. And I think for each person, as I say, it's a very different reason. But I definitely think that, as Daz says, the historic reputation of Christianity, especially the church, is a huge one.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm guessing, Neil, you know, talking about taking the long view, that shifted a lot in the last 40 years.
I think it definitely has. I mean, I was thinking of the 5 things we've spoken about, and I guess all of us would think some things of the 5 sermons. Some of us would think some of them are really easy, and some of us would think some of them are really hard, and we're not all the same. So, you know, I find, you know, mission, if you want to use those words, difficult in some places, easier than others. You know, I don't find hospitality difficult. Other people I know will find talking to strangers about Jesus the easiest, most natural thing in the world. And yet they find inviting somebody into their home difficult. So I think we have to realise that we're not all the same. And yet we are all called to go and make disciples. So it's an easy cop-out to say, I'll make the sandwiches. I'll let somebody else go and talk about Jesus, because unfortunately that's not quite what we're told to do.
No, definitely. Helen, out of the 5 areas, so just to remind people, the ones we did was radical hospitality, passionate worship, questioning faith, risky mission, and sacrificial generosity. Yours was risky mission. We've just spoken about that. Apart from yours, which one do you think kind of either resonated or challenged you the most?
Probably sacrificial generosity. I think that it's really easy. And there's something you said this morning, which really sort of like got me in the gut, in a good way, was when you said, yeah, giving your time is really important, and actually we really value you giving your time, but that's not a cop-out for giving other things, and for giving resource, and for giving finance, and for giving this, that, and the other. My words, not yours. I paraphrase that.
You say it much better than me. Yeah.
I wouldn't say that at all. But I think a lot of the time people go, you know, oh, well, I give my time, so therefore, and actually time is more precious than resource. And you're like, well, to a point, yeah. But actually a church can't run without everything else. And actually where we looked at the other 4, where we looked at hospitality and mission and worship and the other one, questioning faith, I think actually all of those need resource. And actually, whether it's questioning faith, you know, for a lot of people, there's a lot of books and and podcasts and these sorts of things that are really helpful in those deconstructing moments. But actually, they need resource to be created. Risky mission, yes, you can just chat to someone on the street, but actually, it's much easier and much better over a coffee or over a meal, or here are some resources I can give you to go away and look at. Need finance and need funding and need sourcing. And so actually, yes, being able to do the hospitality and the mission is really key, but actually it needs that generosity to go alongside it. And I think that is at least for me and maybe many others, is an absolute cop out. Is when we go, oh, but I serve, I give my time. You know, I'm a sign language interpreter. For those that don't know, and there's a big debate around, you know, should sign language interpreters charge churches when they're interpreting services? Because actually, is it part of their giving to the church, or are they a professional providing a service? And it's a really big debate. And you'll be glad to hear that I'm on the side of service as I interpret at our church.
We're not paying you.
But I think that actually, you know, you find people being like, well, I don't need to give to the church because actually the 100 quid they could pay me for the service, I'm saving them. And so actually you're going, in effect, I'm sort of giving them 100 quid. And you're like, well, no, that's not how it works. But I think that there is a huge culture of that.
Yeah, no, definitely. And thanks, Helen. Neil, what for you? Yours was passionate worship, which you said wasn't the one you would naturally kind of swing towards.
I don't think it would. I mean, I really enjoyed doing the sermon, and the passage you'd given me was Isaiah's vision, and it was a vision of God. It was a vision of Himself. It was a vision of service. And people that know me, you know I'm a sort of proactive person that likes to do things, and therefore it was a good sermon for me to prepare, but also for that passage to read. And you know, the one word I remember from Helen's sermon is go. Perhaps the one phrase that I remember from my own sermon is worship is not a spectator sport. You know, and it involves us, and it involves us doing something. I think if I was going to pick one out, if you told me there are 5 things, go and write down what you think the 5 things might be. The one that I wouldn't have written down, but I think in a way is one of the most powerful ones, is the questioning faith.
Yeah.
I don't think I ever would have worked out that is a sign of a healthy church. But having listened to the
original list.
Sorry?
It's not on the original list.
Well,
that's what I added in myself.
Yeah. But I think it's absolutely great that we don't just accept things exactly as we've always been told, that we do work it out, that we will have different interpretations. And a healthy church is one where we can interpret things differently, but we can still work together and accept other people's points of view. You know, not on matters of grace and you know, saving faith, but on matters of, you know, exactly how creation happened, or, you know, pick your own subject. I think it's a really healthy church that we, you know, and one of the things you said today in the sermon was, you know, you preach in black and white, but you have to go away and think about it as how this sermon affects you. And I think that goes for most sermons, because perhaps we will interpret differently, but I'm not sure that's necessarily a bad thing. I think a church, we're all just clones of the leader. No disrespect, Martin, is not always exactly a good thing.
No, definitely not. We and as you said, we for each of those things, some of them will suit us more than others. We're all different people, and I mean, Paul talked a lot about that, didn't he? About us being different parts of a body, and it's not just in our gifts or in our talents; it's also in the way we think, and a lot of that is affected by how we interpret the world around us and the interactions and the experiences we've had. So, variety is the spice of life, and I think variety is the sign of a healthy church, or a very lackadaisical. Use that word that Helen used. Lackadaisical leader who just doesn't want to pick any particular truth. Now, what's the other Robinson tuning in? What she said in Questioning Faith, Martin reminds us that when we talk about a childlike faith, we need to remember that kids say "why" all the time. I hadn't thought of that before. Really helpful. Yeah, that's something else I nicked. I think it was someone who said who pointed out that children ask lots of questions, and it's important. That's why we got tonight. That's why I'm asking people to ask questions, because I think that's healthy. My wife has joined in, Jenny. So let's just see what Jen said. We should value everything people give or serve with, but we should all push ourselves to give more, as we should all want to always be building the kingdom of God. What does God need the church to be? Yeah, I mean, so for those of you who don't go to our church, over the last month, we've been showing different videos about different aspects of the church and the fact that our money comes not from any central national organization, but actually from the guys that go to our church. And if we want to thrive and do well as a church, unfortunately, as Helen's pointed out, money is required. As they say, money makes the world go round. And we do need money in order to do these things. As I sit in my office with my lighting and my camera and my computer, had to be paid for with something. So, and look, Karen has said adults with learning difficulties ask a lot of questions as well, which is great. And with that, how do you reckon we can make our churches more a place where people can ask questions? Because you could say that our sermons are pretty much monologues and don't really encourage questions. So where can people go within our church context to ask questions?
I guess the answer is to a house group. Wouldn't it be great if every single member of the church was able to be attached somehow to a small group that met weekly or fortnightly, get to know some people really well, and have the ability within that group to ask any question you like? Our house group at the moment is talking about the sermon series. So we meet, and last time we met, it was after the Questioning Faith sermon. And I prepared about, 8 or 10 different things that people in church disagree about, and a lot of it's sort of theology, did Jonah and the whale actually happen, or is it an analogy? And it was quite interesting to go around the room, and people felt free to say actually what they thought without fear or favour or people judging them or whatever. And there were quite lots of yeses and quite lots of no's and quite a lot of I haven't got the clues. So, but it's good to be in a group where, you're with people well, you can trust them, and no such thing as a silly question. We've all got them. Yeah.
And I think also for, your weekly check-ins and those things, and people that are part of those groups or, things, but people that are not yet part of one of those groups or, are quite new to the church or are not even maybe even a part of our church, and actually they are potentially, even in a different country maybe, and just tuning in to find out what's going on. I think actually places like this, actually where they've got the comment section that side, I don't know where it is for them. I don't know, somewhere
below.
And actually, I don't
know where it is. Yeah,
I don't know. Yeah, and actually can ask those questions in this sort of forum. And we've also got our email address of got questions. Look at that, at hollybaptist.org.uk. We didn't even plan that.
I know that's how good I am to respond.
So
like
impressed.
That.
If you say so yourself.
And so getting in touch at this address, so I can do that here. I can see where it is. Getting in touch at this address and actually being able to ask those questions, and someone will get back to you with those answers, which I think is great. I think, that's another great thing that's come out of lockdown is things like this forum and this email address.
And you can do it through our Facebook page as well. And Becky, our digital pastor, is really good at responding to questions that people may have. Because it's important. I will say that we can't always give an answer, and sometimes there isn't an answer, or there may be multiple answers, and that's why it's actually good to explore this ourselves. There is a danger. See, I've noticed that we've had a few people come to us who have basically learned a lot about the Christian faith through YouTube, and we're on YouTube, so it's a great place to go looking. But you never know what you're going to get, and you never know what you're tuning into, and you never know where it's come from, and you can get some pretty wild and wacky stuff out there. How do you reckon we can make sure that we're getting something which is, truthful and biblical? Because some people might argue that we're not. It's a really difficult thing. Any ideas?
Well, I guess the first place to go back is to the Bible and compare what people are saying to what the Bible says. Now, the Bible's not always the easiest of books, and you can read one verse and you can probably come up with any argument. But if you can find a passage of scripture, and then you can find a commentary from a well-known source, shall I say? But it isn't easy. It's not. And going back to that question of faith, we all perhaps know our Bibles quite well, but even us won't necessarily agree on absolutely everything. It says.
I mean, I'd recommend probably the Bible Project's a really, really useful place. Loads of YouTube videos, but they've got an app as well, and they've got articles, and that's incredibly in depth, but also very accessible. So that's the Bible Project. Also Bible Gateway, you probably use that to get your Bible translations, and they have commentaries on there as well. And also our church YouTube page, we're trying to increase the amount we've got on there. And also we've got something called Right Now Media, which if you are part of our church or linked to our church, you don't have to attend, but if you're linked to it, you watch online or on our Facebook group, we can give you access to absolutely tons of good quality videos which will really help you to explore your faith in a really safe way, because you're not going to get some weird, wacky stuff about aliens or conspiracy theories or stuff like that. So, that's Right Now Media. So if you are interested in that, you haven't got access, contact us. You can do it through Got Questions, or you can do it for our Facebook page. And I really encourage you to do that. We're coming towards the end. We'll go for a few more minutes, depending on how we get on. I'm just seeing if we've got any more questions. We haven't any more. My wife says, let's catch the wave of where God is moving. I think, with that, I think that's a really healthy thing. Rick Warren talks about that as leaders, as churches, actually looking for what God is doing and trying to get on board with that rather than trying to struggle off in our right direction. And I just want to compare and contrast, linking to that. There's a book here. Where is the camera? There it is. The Healthy Church's Handbook. This is from a UK context. The Church of England commissioned this, and they looked at numerous churches in the UK and looked at so all the healthy ones, the ones that were growing and flourishing, the ones that were fruitful, did they have some things that matched up in terms of what they did? So these are what they had, and just see what you think, guys. Okay, so they'll be energized by faith, outward-looking focus, seeks to find out what God wants. That's linked to what Jen said about catch the wave. Faces the cost of change and growth, operates as a community, makes room for all, and does a few things and does them well. Did any of those just jump out? You think, oh, I like that one?
I think I really liked outward focused, or whatever their wording was.
Outward looking focus, yeah.
Outward looking focus. But I think that only works when you pair it with the one about functioning as a community. Again, I can't remember the words. The community one.
Operates as a community, yeah.
There you go. I think you need both of those. I think if you put too much emphasis on one, then you completely lose the other. And so I think, an outward looking focus is great, but you need that strong community to be able to do it. But similarly, for that community to grow, you need that outward looking focus. So I think there's a huge balance between looking out and looking in, because actually if you're not looking in and looking after your own as such, then actually people are going to tire, they're going to become, disillusioned with it all, and they're going to go and find somewhere else where they're looked after and where they're valued and where those sorts of things. So I think actually, and then you won't be able to do the outward looking because you haven't got the manpower. And so I think those two things are really key, and it's making sure that we're not looking after the people that are already within your community or congregation or whatever word you want to use, just so you can do the looking out. It's actually looking after each other, because we're really important. I think it's really key.
Yeah, Jen reminded me of, I don't know if you've ever seen it, the out, in, and up triangle. Actually, we need all three aspects. It's an equilateral triangle, and everything we have should have an element of up in our worship, in about our community, and out in our mission and in our engaging in the world out there. Yeah. How about you, Neil? I went and closed the book. So
well, that's all right. There were 7 things, and
Yeah.
I'm guessing 90% of us would have nodded at 6 of them and raised our eyebrows at the one said it had the word change in it. Can't
Face
remember
is
what
the
it.
cost of change and growth.
Yeah, and it reminds me of the old joke about how many Baptists does it take to change a light bulb? Change, and none of us like it, do we? If you know what I mean, because we all like what we've got. But I think a healthy church is the one that is willing to, work out the cost and face the cost of changes. Because if we don't change, we'd be the equivalent of a Victorian church now, won't we? If you know what I mean. So
I know a few like that.
Yeah, and it's and nobody likes it, and we all want to put it off, and we all think somebody else should do it. But so that's the one that's stuck in my mind of the 7. I was, nodding my head, thinking yes, and and I don't like change more than anybody else. But I think I do recognise that it's necessary. So,
and I think it's facing the reality that it will cost us.
Yeah,
it will. We will lose something that maybe we cherished. That will have to go in order for us to change. And that we don't have to change, do we? We don't have to do anything. But that's what it's the Healthy Churches Handbook, and that's what they found healthy churches are. They face the cost of change in order to grow. And we can be unhealthy and not change. It's completely up to us, I guess. The one I've always struggled with was to do a few things and do them well. Because I'm like, well, what few things? There's so many things for us to do as a church. And I've always wondered this, and I've never seen this happen, is that, in Hawley we have 7, 8 churches. Actually, we could all take a focus and really work on that. And rather than what we're finding is that every church is just duplicating what every other church is doing, because we need to do everything. And if we miss anything out, then we're in big trouble. So I think that's a really difficult one. As the leader of the church, I struggle to say, okay, what are the few things that you do? Because there are tons of things we should be doing.
Yeah, and that ties into the change of actually sometimes, as you said a moment ago, the change is letting things go.
Yeah.
And actually going, well, that was for a season, but we're now in a new season, so we're going to stop doing this for now.
Yeah.
And so I think that really ties into that. Do a few things and do them well is working out what are those things that have run their season, or at least for now. We're not saying, this is it, done forever, bish, bash, bosh, wish it's over. But actually for this next season, that doesn't fit into where this, that, and the other. And it's just finding what those things are. Because everyone will always think that their thing is the most important thing that has to stay. But don't we all?
Yeah. Rob says, I like change that I have initiated, but others don't always understand the benefits. That's the problem, isn't it?
Absolutely brilliant. Yeah. It's a fantastic comment, and it's the same for all of us. Yeah, I like my changes, just not anybody else's.
Yeah.
You understand the reason behind it, don't you?
Yeah.
You don't do change for change's sake. You do it because we want to grow and get better, and that's a sign of health. And Jen says that's why it's important to see where God is moving and what He's doing, so I can focus into that. Yeah, we don't want to get left behind, do we? We don't want to be that surfer sitting out in the sea and the wave's gone. We want to be able to catch in that wave, and that's where the excitement is. I think possibly in your sermon, Helen, and we had the 12 spies that go to spy in Canaan, and 10 come back and say, no, they're too big, they're too powerful, we can't win. And it was only 2 that said, let's go for it. And in the end, they didn't, and they had to end up wandering for absolutely ages again in the wilderness. They didn't get to the promised land. And then you've got Jesus' disciples who did take the risk. They saw what God was doing, and that's what made it exciting. We have to take some risks in order to catch that wave, and it's going to involve change, and it's going to involve all sorts of things. But that's where the excitement is, and I'd rather be riding that wave and having a whale of a time and looking great while doing it, rather than sitting on my board getting bored because in a place where it's calm.
Yeah. And as someone who's done surfing, it's actually very difficult.
Yeah,
And
I've tried. I did some lessons. I couldn't do it.
Yeah, it's really hard. But actually, so is following Jesus.
Yeah.
It's brilliant, but it's also quite hard.
Yeah, definitely. We need to practice at it.
Yeah,
exactly. Cool. Well, thank you very much, guys, for joining us this evening, and also thank you for your sermons as well. If you do want to catch up with any of those sermons, you can find them on our YouTube channel, and you can watch the entire series. That'll just be there forever, probably. We are next Sunday starting a new series, which is called, my mind has gone blank.
I don't know.
I can't remember. Where's it gone? Let me see if I've got it on my computer somewhere. Oh, Project Other. Yeah, this is an interesting one. Find your life by giving it away. And looking at the example of Jesus and the sacrificial life that he lived. And David's going to be preaching to us the first part of that, which is called Sacrifice, Not Comfort. So that is this Sunday. So do join us online or in person. We'd love to have you with us. But yeah, thank you, Neil. Thank you, Helen. Enjoy the rest of your evening. And thank you to everyone that commented and watched us. See you later.
Take care.
Bye.